Hello, everyone. Good afternoon on the East Coast, and good morning to those elsewhere in the country. I want to welcome you all to the webinar on police probation partnerships to promote successful reentry. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to listen to what we believe is going to be a very informative webinar that includes speakers from three very effective programs around the country. We have from Salt Lake City, we have Chris Lane, who's the Intensive Supervision Probation Supervisor. We also have Sergeant Cole Warnick, who's the Intensive Supervision Probation Unit. From Salt Lake City Behavioral Health Services, we have Seth Teague, who's a Management Analyst with them. From Johnson County, Kansas, we have Amy Weaver, who is with the Department of Corrections and is an Intensive Supervision Officer. Representing the Overland Park Police Department, which is in Johnson County, we have Officer Zach Stevens. And then we have Joe Friedman, who's the Behavioral Health Coordinator for the Portland, Maine Police Department. My name is Jerry Murphy. I'm the Director of the Law Enforcement Program here at the Council of State Governments Justice Center. The webinar today will be organized around the three presentations. So after just a brief introduction, we will move on to first presentation from Salt Lake County, Utah, then followed by the Overland Park Neighborhood Improvement Project from Johnson County, Kansas, and then Joe Friedman will present on the program in Portland, Maine. We're excited to learn more about their partnerships. We know that police and probation share many common goals, although they do have different missions. They are, in several instances, working towards common goals and share, obviously, common interests. In addition to those common interests, they have similar benefits, and so these partnerships will allow both probation and police departments to, to achieve these benefits not only separately, but then combined benefits by working together through these partnerships. There are several ways that the partnerships can be organized, whether they be preemptive or preventative or reactive. These are some of the common organizing frameworks. And then within those frameworks, there are different programs and partnership activities that can be undertaken. And I think today what we're going to hear about are some of these partnership activities, different emphasis on some activities in some of the locations, and other locations are emphasizing other partnership activities. But why don't we just move right in now and begin hearing about the different programs. So let me turn it over to the representatives from Salt Lake County, Utah.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the nation. Thank you for having us today. We're honored to present this new program that we have implemented in Salt Lake County, which is a collaborative effort between Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office, Salt Lake County Criminal Justice Services, and Salt Lake County Behavioral Health Services. This program has never been done or created to the extent that we have going right now, so we're pretty proud of it. So our mission statement is that this program was put in place to provide an alternative to incarceration as a response to our jail overcrowding and new laws that were just went in effect last October, which we'll talk a little bit about. Our clients that we deal with are high risk, high need, and the real purpose of this is just to improve, not only to free up that jail space and address the overcrowding need, but also to improve the overall quality of life with our clients, so hopefully keep them out of the system for a long time to come. Along with that, to mitigate any risk to public safety and ensure that proper supervision has taken place as we move forward.
So we'd like to give you a quick background on kind of the legislative history of our program and how it was kind of implemented, how it came along. And so really, as Cole alluded to, back in 2014, our legislature was looking at the astronomical growth in the prison population and jail populations in the county and state, and just said it was not sustainable. And so the legislature commissioned a study from the Council of Criminal and Juvenile Justice. And in that study, they found that obviously the growth was unsustainable. Why don't you go ahead and go to the next slide there. We have some graphs up here. The study found that there was an 18% growth in the prison population from 2004 to 2013 in Utah, while the rest of the states combined had a 3% growth. And then when they shrunk that gap from 2009 to 13, so a few years less, we saw an 8% growth amid some of the changes that have been made in the state, while the rest of the states had been shrinking their prison populations by about 3%, which was just, for us, quite an alarming trend that we wanted to get on top of and make sure we put programming in place to kind of solve some of those issues. And so with that, we knew that there would be new legislation introduced, which was our Justice Reinvestment Bill, House Bill 348. And in doing this, we knew that there would be some effects that occurred on the county in such that we saw 300% growth in the county's responsibility in probation services, which would typically be the state's responsibility in the past. A lot of our felons had become misdemeanants, and so we were now dealing with a tremendous increase in caseload. The study also found that there would be about a 40% growth in the prison population absent doing anything over the next 20 years. And so in response to that, we developed the ISP program, and we thought we'd give you a little bit of the financial just real quick, just to show you what a year one investment cost us. We did about $1 million in growth in programming from the Sheriff's Office, as well as almost $300,000 from Criminal Justice Services. And then in the first year, we spent about $340,000 in state funding for treatment services through the whole county's public network of treatment providers.
Okay, well now I'm going to get into a little bit more specifics as to the structure of our program and the way that we manage it from day to day. As Seth noted, this is unique, at least to Utah. I've worked in corrections and law enforcement for about 24 years, and I've never seen the level of collaboration between probation, law enforcement, and treatment that we have managed to achieve here with this program. One of the most difficult hurdles that we overcame were our team roles and responsibilities. So as I noted, we had the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office, Salt Lake County Criminal Justice Services, Salt Lake County Behavioral Health Services, 7 contracted treatment providers, and the organization at our University Medical Center that does the assessment and referral services for us. We've been able to meld all of that together. We are all housed here in our offices at Criminal Justice Services, so we're all together, of course with the exception of our contracted treatment providers around the county. And so we all share office space, and we all work and interact together on a daily basis. As you can see here on this slide, we've put together just a real brief summary of the roles and responsibilities. I believe we have more detailed information hidden in this presentation if you want to look at it later to see, because this is one of the areas where it seems we get the most questions on who does what. For instance, when you have the officers working with the case managers and they both are assigned to a particular client, how do we handle that? And you can see here some of the areas how we do that. So essentially, our case managers are responsible for the overall case management of the probation matters, as well as corresponding with the courts and with the treatment providers. Our Sheriff's Office provides the law enforcement activities that are needed, as well as all of the field and community supervision for our clients that is conducted. And again, there is overlap between these two. We've made an effort to not segregate it completely. So in other words, sometimes case managers will go in the field with the officers to visit with their clients, and sometimes officers will meet with the clients in the office along with the case manager to address an issue. This is just to better enable our coordination, as well as to prevent any triangulation on behalf of the client attempting to play one of us off the other. Behavioral Health Services, that's Seth's role. They manage our funding for all of our treatment issues, as well as help us collect and track data for the program so that we can show what areas we're having success in and where we need improvement. Again, that role is kind of vital because he is our conduit to all the treatment providers throughout the county. At Behavioral Health Services, it's their job to regularly audit those programs and work closely with them. And so they have those communication bridges in place, which has greatly helped facilitate this endeavor. Again, then we have our assessment and referral services. We have 2 clinicians that work here in the office that provide all of our ASAM assessments for our clientele, so that we can determine what, if any, level of treatment is necessary, and then what's the most appropriate provider to make that referral to. And then we have, like I say, we have 6 contracted treatment providers that work with our program. What is unique in their role, not only providing the treatment, they do come to our offices here at CJS every Monday morning, and we staff cases individually. This was one of our biggest hurdles to overcome. Of course, I'm sure you're all familiar with HIPAA and 42 CFR. This provided some challenges in order for us to share this information, but this has enabled us to more effectively case plan and, more importantly, coordinate that probation case plan, which is addressing the criminogenic needs identified in the LSCMI assessment, with whatever treatment plan the treatment provider is attempting to institute as well. Go through all that. And here are the more detailed layouts of the individual roles. Like I say, I'm not going to go through that now due to time constraints, but you're, of course, free to review them at your leisure. As I noted a minute ago, ISP is an evidence-based program. Specifically, we target high-risk and high-need offenders as identified through a validated risk needs and responsivity assessment. In our case, that's the LSCMI. Anybody who's high-risk, high-need is eligible for our program and can be referred to see if there's one room and if they're acceptable. Once a client is brought in through the LSCMI, there is then a clinical assessment conducted, the ASAM assessment I previously mentioned, where the appropriate level of treatment is determined and then the appropriate referral made. Our basic program structure is 9 months in length. This can be modified or either shortened or increased depending on client performance on probation. But typically we look for a 9-month structure that's divided into 3 phases. We've built into this a reducing level of supervision to incentivize the client to want to progress through the program. So initially they need to come in and check in with their case manager every week, and they are visited in the field at some point every week also. And then as they move to phase 2, that becomes every other week, and then by the time they're in phase 3, it is only once a month. Some of the things we look at to judge progress and to enable phase progression, these are just some examples of areas we might look at when they move from phase 1 to phase 2. We want them to complete a stable residence, get their clinical assessment done, and complete their treatment intake, resolve any employment or education issues they may have, and have some sort of transportation situation resolved, and we might move them to phase 3. I'm not going to go through it and read all of these. I'm watching the time tick. But you can see that there are standards, and we do have forms in place that we utilize to give the client a sense of accomplishment each time they move from phase to phase, where they check that off. Our overall process of how clients come to us is pretty straightforward. The referrals either come from the district or justice court, and this can be the result of a direct sentencing by the judge who's familiar with the program, or a referral made by our pre-sentence report investigation unit that, after interviewing the client, decided this might be an appropriate sentencing recommendation. Once they come to us, again, the LSCMI high-risk, high-need status must be met, and if it is, they're then assigned to both a case manager and an officer to help them through their probation. Once that's done, again, they're referred to the ARS clinicians to receive their SUD assessment, and then made a referral to an SUD treatment provider. And then once the supervision is initiated in that manner, we begin the regular office field checks in combination with the weekly staffing meetings with the treatment providers every Monday to facilitate the implementation of both the probation case plan and the treatment plan. And then from there, essentially, they'll either move on to graduation after successful completion of our program, or if not, they'll be referred back to the court for possible revocation or transfer to a different supervision. Some of the outcomes that we're measuring and some of the goals that we've tried to meet and to judge the success of our program is we want to, of course, in the short term, increase that access to services. So, and by that I mean we have both managed to make favorable impression on reducing the amount of time it takes them to get into treatment and get assessed and make that connection. Here you can just see at a glance some of our referrals when the program started out last year, went pretty slow and has moved on. Here you see some of our demographics. You can see that average LSCMI score there, what I would point out to you, and then that heroin and meth seem to be our highest substance abuse problem at this time. Again, you can see that there, that heroin and opiates is by far the leading issue we're addressing as an SUD right now.
Okay, these numbers up here, you can see 286 is the total court referrals, those that were sentenced to our program. Out of those 286, we have removed 77, which gives us an 82% of all of our clients have actually made it to the substance abuse assessment. That is remarkably high and much higher than we initially anticipated when we started the program. You can also see here out of our total active clients, 73% have remained engaged in treatment, and that is greatly due to the officer and case manager support and motivational role that they provide the client day in and day out. One of our big goals is we want to make sure that they actually get to that substance abuse assessment very quickly. We are getting our clients there within 2 weeks, and that's primarily because of the 2 clinicians that we have on the floor with us. We're able to knock out that probation intake as well as that SUD assessment, oftentimes the same day. This chart shows from SUD assessment to treatment intake, we are getting them there right around 2 weeks. The goal for the team is to get them in treatment within 30 days. A breakdown of how it looks for our case managers and officers. Right now we're at about 93% capacity. We're set up to serve 200 clients. That breaks down to about 26 per officer, no more than 30 per case manager, and treatment dollars spent overall, it averages out to be about $3,800. To date, we have graduated 23 clients, and you can see their LSCMI score. Their pre-score was 28.4, dropping all the way down to an average of 16.7, which equates to a 52% reduction in risk. We are on track to graduate roughly another 22 clients at the end of February, and our numbers continue to go up every 3 or 4 months that we have a graduation.
And just in conclusion, we just wanted to share with you that the program has had its speed bumps and some little bumps in the road, but and we're not perfect by any stretch. We've been trying to address any of the concerns as they arise and kind of throw at them whatever we have as far as resources. One of our biggest challenges, as Chris had alluded to originally, was the communication and working through HIPAA and 42 CFR. And in doing that, we've had to make special arrangements for some of our treatment providers to come in individually and meet with us rather than as a whole staffing, even though releases have been in place. But you can see the whole list of challenges that we've worked through in the program as well as here for the clients. And anytime we receive an issue with the client, whether it's housing or tools for employment or anything like that, we look for additional resources in the community. As we'd like to close with this last slide here with all the collaborative partners we've involved in our ISP program, and to show you just how far we've gone in including medication-assisted treatment and all of our treatment providers, all of the law enforcement agencies that have helped make this program really work. So that's it.
And that is it for Salt Lake County. We thank you all for listening to our presentation, and please feel free at any time to contact us with any further questions you have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris and Cole and Seth, for giving a quick snapshot on what an impressive program. And I'm sure some of the attendees might have questions. I neglected to mention when we began that there is a question box that you can type in your questions and submit them to us. And then when we conclude with all 3 presentations, we will field those questions and direct them to the appropriate presenters. So again, thank you very much, Salt Lake County. Let me now turn it over to Amy Weaver and Zach Stevens in Johnson County, Kansas.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Amy Weaver. You'll hear my voice change throughout this program. It's going to be Zach Stevens with Overland Park. He's going to be going over some of this information as well. So we will just dive into Johnson County, Kansas. Basically, Overland Park neighborhood project started in Overland Park, which is in the Kansas City metro area. It's the second most populous city in the state of Kansas. The project was initiated around January 2012. It was a community-based effort to improve citizen-police relations, address city code violations, and assist citizens in accessing the services to be successful. The goal was to improve a declining neighborhood with high incidence of crime. There are 4 areas in Overland Park. You'll see it crossed off there where they are. Overland Park is broken down into those 4 areas, with areas 1 and 2, which are the top 2 areas that make up 60% of all crime. Areas 1 and 2 have over 50% of crime on all but 3 crime types. So as you can tell, area 1 there is pretty small. That's where the original target area started, and we'll discuss that here in a minute. So the original target area was a partnership targeted to a little area in Area 1. In March 2012, there were approximately 265 clients living in the area. So all those little blue dots are where clients, probation and parole clients are living at the time. The original area is outlined there in red. The target area lacked neighborhood associations in all sections, so the city created several for their stabilization project. It's a way to take back from the neighborhood from gang activity and apathy. There was a lot of areas for renters, so they didn't really care about the areas. Since the project, Overland Park's relationship with the neighborhood has greatly improved. The program was in full swing in August 2013, and then in January 2016, the program area expanded to anywhere north of I-435. So you'll see that yellow arrow at the bottom. That's interstate, so basically all the white area above that is where we are basically targeting now with clients. The mission, as you can tell there, kind of just pulling a few words out. We have collaborating, strengthen neighborhoods, and client success. That's basically what we're trying to do in the long run. We're going to do this through enhancing relationships and establishing partnership with police department and probation. Hopefully we're reducing crime, improving the neighborhoods, improving the success rate of the clients on probation and parole, and then sharing available resources.
And hello, my name is Zach Stevens. I'm a police officer in the city of Overland Park, and in particular, I'm what they call a COPS officer, and most often I get asked what exactly is a COPS officer and why am I different from one of our patrol officers. In short and in broad overview, a COPS officer, we are a uniformed officer where we drive marked units. And the reason we're different from patrol is we maintain our position kind of year after year, and provides the area with a continuity of service. If you remember, we just showed you a map on the slides, kind of how the city is separated, and that's also in roughly how we separate our COPS officers. We get a specific geographic area that we're responsible for. The COPS unit's main focus is to cultivate relationships at large. We then leverage those relationships, solve problems, whether they're long, short-term problems, whether it's a street crime problem, whether it's more of a, a social work problem from from an offender standpoint. We have a particular emphasis on apartment managers, homeowner associations, neighborhood groups. We try to do our best to reach out to those people.
All right, so how we supervise the clients is through the Level of Service Inventory Revisor, the LSIR. It's used to determine the criminogenic risks and needs. It gives us the level of supervision and intensity of intervention or services. So individuals are supervised as low, moderate, medium, high, and high risk. The higher the score, the higher the risk for future criminal behavior. And then those individuals are the ones that are warranting majority of our attention. The people that are the lower risk individuals, it's shown that over-supervising can increase their risk for reoffending. So that leads us into the program criteria. So right now we basically have 3 programs that are active in this program. We have community corrections, court services, and then juvenile community corrections. So all the adult clients have the LSIR. If they are high or medium high risk, they're automatically added to the Overland Park Neighborhood Project if they live in the area. This entails an individual to have a minimum of 1 joint home visit between law enforcement and probation. And then juveniles, basically all the clients are being added on to the program currently, and then the PO can just request extra attention for certain individuals if they're having issues. The collaboration, basically we meet monthly to review the program's roster, and that's POs and LEOs. We exchange information regarding if the client's reporting, their treatment progress, if they're employed or not, drug and alcohol usage, issues within the residence or possible issues, and then police contact with offenders, because sometimes we may not get a report on that. With the home visits, an initial visit is completed on all clients that live in the area, and then the purposes of visits is to help build success, not surveillance.
Well, and by partnering with us, what they're doing is a lot of these people, as you can imagine, have had really negative contacts with the police department. By using us, they get the same officer time after time. We normally provide them with a good our work cell that they can call us if they need something, they have a question, and it kind of, again, using that continuity of service model to try to help these clients along.
The benefits of the program for probation is it allows for a collaborative intervention approach to address negative behaviors. So we're normally addressing drug and alcohol usage, hanging out with bad associates, criminal thinking, family dysfunction. So kind of getting that information to the officers, we're able to receive information from them as well who patrol the neighborhoods, and they can be out there and be our eyes and see what's going on in their daily lives, because when they come into probation appointments, everything's perfectly fine with them majority of the time. So it's nice to get that outside view of what's going on.
For law enforcement, the benefits is really pretty broad. You know, we have monthly staff meetings where we staff all the people that are on the program. We talk about what their needs may or may not be, what us police officers can do to help service those needs. Intelligence is absolutely a means to deter crime, and the meetings and going out and talking to people with the right intentions, we're better informed regarding stuff that otherwise may not have gotten reported, unreported crimes, undetected crimes, and who just the key players in these neighborhoods are. With us working for the same result, successful retention of the individual as a law-abiding effective citizen in the community, that's ultimately what we're both working for here.
We have the Strengthening Families program, which is a 14-session or 14-week evidence-based program. It's designed for families at high risk for conflict or neglect and lack of supervision or discipline within the house. So the facilitators are from probation, law enforcement, mental health, KDC health, which is foster care, and churches. Having a wide variety of the facilitators is a great way to help the client see the positive side of the individuals who work in the field. And the clients don't necessarily know where the people are from. They're normally dressed in normal clothes, so they have no idea that one of them may be a police officer that they're having this positive interaction with. Data results, it's important to track to be able to show the benefits of the program. You can tell there we have a pretty high success rate with the area, just tracking the certain area in Overland Park. Obviously people move, LSIR drops, so that's good. Obviously with their dropping score, it means that hopefully their risk to reoffend is not as high. And then obviously warrant, custody, and revoked. So the light green is community corrections, and then the dark green is court services. Looking at the crime in area 1 and 2, you can kind of tell it started out pretty high, it dipped down, and then kind of went back up. Although they've been kind of up and down, it's difficult to say that this program has been the reason for that, but it would be nice to hope that it is a factor. It is lower regardless now compared to when the program started. A success story, I'll just kind of hit one there at the bottom just for time. Basically, I went out on a probation visit with a law enforcement officer. We went to his house and we witnessed him in a vehicle with his 2 young children getting ready to leave the parking lot. I had a breathalyzer with me. I asked him to pull the car over so we could do a quick breathalyzer before he left, and it came back positive for alcohol. So we were able to obviously stop that car from driving and possibly having an accident, and who knows what could have happened. We were able to address his drinking problem, get him into treatment, find out how big of a problem he really did have. And since he completed that, he's basically completed probation successfully after getting him into the treatment he needed. We have a lot of resources and partners within the county. My Resource Connection, everybody has that link there. I would definitely suggest you look it up. It's something you could probably get in your area as well. It's a one-stop shop website that connects hundreds of agencies and services. We work with Johnson County Mental Health Emergency Services. They have after-hour teams. They have a mobile crisis response team and co-responder. So if the officers report to a house that has a mental health need, they're able to get somebody to go with them that's better able to work with those individuals. Advice for startup, basically this needs to start at the top with the city manager, mayor, city council, or police department leadership. We kind of started in the middle, so we kind of learned from that. And then you obviously need to realize for probation and parole that this requires innovation. Some policies will need to be reviewed and possibly adjusted. And then training for law enforcement so they understand what our job is and how we work with the clients. So that's all we have right now. Our contact information is there listed for you if you have any further questions. And I appreciate everybody being here.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Amy and Zach in Johnson County. Let me now turn it over to Joe Friedman in Portland, Maine.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for listening to us, and hopefully you're getting good information. What I'd like to say first and foremost is thank you to all the other presenters for such outstanding work. And because we're working on time here, know that please do not hesitate to reach out to me if there's anything you want any follow-up on once the webinar is completed. So I became the behavioral health coordinator thanks to a grant through BJA and Council of State Governments in 2010. I'd been with the police department since 2006. And we now have our behavioral health unit, which is 3 full-time clinicians. We also have partnered with universities, which is a really inexpensive way to be able to have a relationship with a university. We get interns to our master's level. So we get them for a year for free, and we train them within our unit, and they respond with us and also solely by the end of their year. So we have our police liaison also with a mental health agency, and that person is full-time but based out of the police department. So we respond with officers. We have a call sign and a radio in our own unmarked cars, and we also do a lot of follow-up, and that's where we do a lot of our partnerships. So our stakeholder engagement is constant. We are doing this on a daily basis with individual cases, but also on a systems level as well. So we have lots of meetings in place. And I'm not going to list them all out, but they're here on this slide, especially with hospitals and with the jail staff and district attorneys and our probation and our pretrial. That has to be really fluid in our world anyway, where we're just communicating on a regular basis. So we may have individual meetings on individual cases, but then we also meet regularly on our systems and communication, so we're always trying to make that more effective. When we're engaging with probation and other partners with jail and with the district attorney's office, because we're so active in collaborating on a daily basis, literally a district attorney might just call me and say, I have this case, this person's willing to get some help instead, and so we will put together some kind of a case where we can help reduce jail time and instead have treatment instead. And then clinicians and probation officers will work together. So we may be working with somebody and then they violate probation and they they may go to jail for one night, but then we're working together to try to get them into treatment. So especially with opiates and other addiction, that makes us nervous when people spend too much time in jail, and we want to make sure, though, that there isn't too much time on the street either. So if they're willing to get treatment, we'd rather have them stay in jail for 3 days, but then be driven by a clinician and a probation officer right to treatment. So we try to work together on that, and our district attorneys as well. So that's one thing that has really become life-saving. Our barriers that we come across are when somebody does want treatment and then we have limited options. There may not be a bed open. We have a lot of limited resources right now, and we're in drastic need of having long-term treatment for mental health, substance use, and trauma, which overlap and integrate a lot, and we would like to see that happen. We also have sometimes where the individual is resistant, so as much as we may be, with a probation officer, we could be going into jail every day with them and trying to encourage somebody to be willing to do treatment, and they're resistant to treatment, or they leave treatment, they're no longer engaged in treatment, they might be doing it just to not have any consequences criminally, and then that's not exactly what they needed necessarily. And so those would be barriers that we struggle with that are going to probably be a constant. We have really strict involuntary commitment laws in our state that we're trying to work on how we can have some legislative action that can help with changing some of that. So we do a lot of, like I said, we do a lot of systems collaboration. So we'll have a statewide meeting coming up in March, and that includes everyone that was on our stakeholder engagement slide and then some, where we'll have everybody get to a table and we'll talk about some of the things that we could be doing differently. We have a lot of gaps in our system right now, where somebody could be suffering from some mental illness and they're self-medicating with substances, and then they're engaging in criminal behavior, and that's how the trajectory is going, and we're not able to get them what they need when they need it. That window of opportunity can be pretty small sometimes. I think I'm going to make sure that we have time for questions, but it just would give one example of a case where we had a young man who was addicted to opiates, co-occurring with depression and anxiety. He had a minor probation violation, but we were really nervous about his use and his high risk for using and relapsing. So that next day after being arrested, the probation officer and one of our clinicians went in and met with him, and he was willing to engage in treatment, but he too, there was just some things going on in his life in which he was really nervous about being on his own out on the street, knowing that he was really high risk for using again. And so he then worked with the probation officer and with our clinician and also the DA, and we actually kept him in jail for 2 weeks only because we needed to be able to have a bed available. But then the clinician and our substance use disorder liaison were able to transport him directly from jail to treatment. So we found that that's pretty huge when we don't have beds available in the time frame that we'd like them to be. And I'm not sure around the country if you're having those same issues, but I'm just guessing that can be pretty tricky. I am going to do another example I think we have time for. So we also do a lot of proactive work, which is why I use this example here. So we work closely with our officers, and we also have community policing around our city. So we have 6 community policing social workers placed in the city, and in this one area there's this young man, and he has just been escalating in lots of different aggressive behaviors. He's going into some criminal behavior. So my team and we tried pulling in other agencies as well, including police officer. We really don't want to charge him with a crime. He's 11 years old. And at the same time, our juvenile probation, they work really well with us, and so it's more for leverage that he does have this charge because mom's been resistant. We think she's actually afraid of him more than anything else. So that's what we're currently doing. We're trying to use that as a means to be able to get him the help that he needs now, and for mom too. Actually, we're trying to get trauma, integrated trauma therapy for the both of them, and then some more additional services for him and also for mom that we think that they've been struggling with. So that is what I have. Of course, I can talk about this all day long, so that I'm more than happy. If anybody has any specific questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you very much, Joe. I'm now going to turn it over to my colleague, Talia Peckerman, who will be fielding the questions you have submitted and directing them to the appropriate participant.
Hi, thanks, Jerry, and thank you so much to all of our presenters for taking the time to share this information about your very innovative programs, and thank you to all the attendees who are listening. And please continue to type in questions to Keisha, or you can select host, one of the two, to type in your questions. We've got a bunch already. We are going to kick it off with, this is a question for Salt Lake City. Someone asked, where can I get more information on the LSCMI assessment?
Well, you're more than welcome to email me at the contact information on the end of our presentation. I'd be happy to share that information with you. They do have their own website that you can just Google anytime and pull up. I don't have the web address in front of me. It is a little different than the LSIR in that it provides a case management component, which is quite useful to addressing the criminogenic needs it identifies. And it's also set up on it's web-based, where you can just do all of the assessments and then reassessments and closing assessments online without necessarily needing to create the paper and print the things out.
Thanks, Sergeant Warnock. We have another one here for Salt Lake while I still have you. How do you approach the HIPAA issues, and how are they resolved?
Well, HIPAA really isn't our primary concern, because as probation officers and sheriff's officers, we are not considered covered entities. That can become a gray area when you're dealing with a treatment provider that might be. But from our end, that's not our primary concern. We have addressed the treatment provider's concerns in that area. For instance, one of the ways we did it, when we hold our weekly treatment staffings, we schedule it in such a way that each contractor provider has a 20-minute time slot for that day that's reserved for them. So they come into the meeting room with us without the other providers being present. And then on top of that, we have releases of information in place with all of our clients, and these releases include all of our contracted providers, because we do sometimes see clients migrate from one to the other as their changes and needs change. And so those two components there have been the most difficult to work out, but right now we have it working pretty smoothly by doing it with the releases in combination with the separate staffing sessions. We've been able to avoid any conflicts with them regarding confidentiality.
Thank you guys very much. I'm going to ask a couple of questions to Overland Park now. The first one is SFP only for ISP clients, and also is it voluntary? That's for Amy.
Okay, sorry, I think we just now chimed in. Basically, it's not necessarily just for probation clients. The officers can also have people referred to this program.
The short answer is yes, voluntary. What happens is we can refer people to the program, and probation refers people to the program. Our Johnson County Mental Health Department, they also refer people to the program. But at the end of the day, it's never a mandatory thing for these people to go it's usually put to them as highly recommended.
Okay, thanks for that. Also, do law enforcement officers volunteer for the program in Overland Park, or how does that work?
Well, I would follow that up with another question. Are we talking about strengthening families, or are we talking about the neighborhood improvement project?
The neighborhood improvement project.
Yeah, so yes and no. The law enforcement officers that are involved are all part of the unit that I'm a part of, the COPS unit. And nobody's forced to be a COPS officer. It's an application process. And so once you're a COPS officer, it's understood that that's part of the duties is that we participate in that project. So if you're a COPS officer, you're in it. And if you're not a COPS officer, then you can apply to be one, and then therefore you become part of it.
Okay, thanks very much. That was helpful. Okay, and for Joe from Portland, how much information is reported to the court from the work that you do with your clients?
Are they asking in terms of, for example, so we are clinicians, so I'm not going to report if somebody shares with me, for example, like a personal situation that they're going through. However, I will advocate for them. So I may present in court with them, and the district attorney knows that I'm going to be there, the lawyer knows that I'm going to be there, and I may be advocating for, yes, I think that this person is engaged and that treatment would be beneficial and that they would be successful with treatment as an alternative option, or with deferred dispositions, we do that as well. So I'm not giving personal information that we talk about. And if I need to, I'll have a release sign, but that's, again, only if the client is willing to share that, unless, of course, there's a risk level there. So sometimes we have people who become resistant that we've reached out to, and they may be in a place where they're very high risk of harm, and that if that's a concern, then I'm reporting on the risk, though, not details in terms of their history.
Okay, thanks, Joe. One more for you, Joe. How important is the DA's role in the successful collaboration of your program?
Well, when it comes to our court cases, we're really fortunate. I've been building that relationship for a long time, and we have a really wonderful district attorney's office, so they're really open to that. I realize that that's a barrier in other places, but for us, I mean, they reach out to us saying, hey, I have this client that we may not even have been aware of before, so we could be being referred to from the DAs. So we meet with them regularly, and they know the work now that we've built that reputation. So for anyone beginning that process in there, wherever you're at, I always feel like if you're making phone calls and setting up a meeting, getting to know people, and then once you have that relationship, that back and forth becomes really effective no matter which relationship area that you're looking at for that stakeholder engagement. Building that relationship is absolutely key, and maintaining that relationship because people change over time. So building that, and then for us, that's what makes it work, is because we have those relationships. And if that didn't answer anybody's question, they can email me as well.
Thank you very much for that offer as well. One more question for you. How is your program funded?
Well, originally we were funded as it was one position through a mental health agency placed at the police department. And then we received a grant that allowed me to be, so I'm a Portland Police Department employee now, but that began as a grant funded through BJA. And then sustainability-wise, we were able to show the city the worth of that position. And then this last year, we were able to expand that position. So 2 of our positions are funded by the police department as budget line city employees with our police department. Because you can show your worth and how you help save money, reduce time on calls for officers, and also reduction of calls ongoing. And I'd be more than happy to talk anyone through that piece. And then the interns are free. So that's how we get we get a lot of sustainability with that process too.
Okay, thank you, Joe. And the same question for Overland Park. Someone asked about your funding resources and how you guys managed to sustain your program.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. Originally, the program was funded by a federal grant, but since that time and due to our success, it's really become a part of our normal 40-hour work weeks, and so we normally do it just during the course of our duties. So in short, it's funded by normal tax dollars.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to swing back over to Salt Lake. You mentioned the heroin and opiate issue. How do you address that?
Well, we, as I stated before, we do provide the ASAM assessment for them here in the office, which determines the appropriate level of care, like say whether that be residential, intensive outpatient, or simply outpatient. And then we do have 6 contracted providers for those assessors to choose from to make an appropriate referral. We also have access to funding through behavioral health services to provide MAT, medication-assisted treatment. That would be, for instance, methadone or Vivitrol, for example, to help these individuals address that issue, because it is, particularly in Utah, becoming quite epidemic, and not just with the heroin, but the opioids in general. So that is definitely a focus of our program.
Yeah, one thing I would add too is just that in Utah, we are not in an expansion state, and so these are resources that aren't necessarily available to any person, you know, in that particular situation. So it's a total benefit of the program to allow them to access the MAT therapy, the full spectrum of our treatment provider network, and everything else that they have.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Yeah, definitely an issue across the country. You guys in Salt Lake, you talked about graduation. What happens if somebody doesn't graduate? What does that mean if they don't graduate, and what happens to them?
So when we look at graduation, there's 3 other ways that we have lost our clients, and one of them is through transfers. So if we have a situation where a client may be in a better situation or a safer living environment outside of the county, we may look at transferring their case to AP&P or another court probation supervision. Or if it's a mental health need that we can just, we're simply not set up to handle, we may look at transfer them to a mental health court.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and I guess the end game would be if they just are unable or unwilling to get into compliance and we cannot find another resource, then it would be we file a stay report in the order to show cause request with the courts and proceed with revocation proceedings.
And like add to that, like I believe Joe from Portland mentioned, our goal is to reduce jail time. So a lot of times we will address the courts and send out stay report and address the violations in order to show cause and hopefully get them back out of jail as well as quickly as possible. Certainly we know with this population of clients, we really need to give them a chance, and sometimes it takes 1, 2, 3 times to get them back into treatment and moving forward.
Okay. Thanks. And one last question for you guys. Are you planning on expanding to the juvenile justice population? That's also for Salt Lake.
You have completely different jurisdictions in that area. In other words, juvenile justice in Utah is a state function, and we are Salt Lake County probation, and so there really isn't any overlap there. In regards to this program, which was just created within the county, basically between our director and the sheriff and behavioral health got together on their own and created it. So, but yeah, I guess my short answer would be I don't really know, as we don't really have a working relationship with them.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back to Overland Park. Overland Park, do you provide trainings to the participants in the partnership? And that's referring to the police officers and probation officers. Do they receive special training for their positions?
We didn't necessarily have any special training. We did have a little bit of training regarding evidence-based practices, motivational interviewing, just kind of ways to talk with the client to let them know, you know, even though they see a police officer, they're not necessarily in trouble. So I think that's kind of been one of our biggest issues, possibly, as far as a partnership is concerned with the clients.
And all of the cops officers and therefore the police officers involved in the program, we're all CIT trained, and we also all go through interview training to try to help out.
Okay, great. And another one for you guys in Overland. Do you, and if so, how do you, evaluate whether or not the collaboration efforts actually impact crime or recidivism?
Yeah, that's been a challenge for us, I'll be honest with you. We've worked with our crime analysis unit on trying to put a number to that, but it's been difficult to quantify because our program was originally designed to target a geographical area, and because our clients move around so much and they're transient by nature, that's been difficult to pin down. What we can tell you is that the clients who have been more involved with the neighborhood improvement project, and they've had more involvement with law enforcement, we have seen over time, and I don't have any hard numbers to give you, unfortunately, but we have seen their rates of recidivism go down.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, it's difficult to determine causality. It's very difficult to measure that, but thanks for your response. And also for you guys, are there certain graduated sanctions or incentives that you have seen to be more effective than others?
Not necessarily. I mean, we're only putting the higher risk clients on there. So obviously if their score is going down with the LSIR, we do it every 6 months and or yearly, depending upon if there's any major changes. So, if their score is going down, we don't want to over-supervise them, so we're taking them off the program if need be. So, I mean, this isn't something because they're necessarily in trouble. It's just really to help the client and help the community.
Okay, thank you. And back to Salt Lake. You mentioned that you can shorten or increase the length of the program for an individual depending on if he or she needs more time in it. How do you go about deciding this, and does the court need to sign off? How does that process work?
Yes and no. As far as involving the court, it depends on I guess the severity of the violation that we're addressing. But yes, in short, all of this would be addressed to the court with a stay report where we would make recommendations. As far as, for instance, they're coming up on 9 months and they're not quite done with their treatment, so we're going to extend them a few more months, we wouldn't necessarily need to address that with the court because they understand what the conditions of the ISP program itself are and that those need to be met before graduation can occur. But yes, if there were a severe violation that we needed to report back to them on, we would of course notify the court and then maybe restart them in the program. And conversely, if they're doing really well and we want to graduate them early for whatever reason, we would again just send a report to the court and articulate our rationale for that. And that could be for reasons that they do exceptionally well in treatment, make a lot of progress, say they have a good job, established residence, et cetera, and the structure isn't really needed anymore for them. We would look at an early termination.
Okay, thanks. And wait, just a couple more for you guys. Are the assessments to determine eligibility for the IPS done before or after sentencing?
Yes, the LSCMI assessment is not only done for ISP clients here at Salt Lake County Probation, but it is applied to all of our probation clients, and that is done after sentencing. So once the judge sentenced the client to probation or ISP here, if the assessment had not already been done during a pre-sentence investigation, they would be scheduled to meet with one of our assessment case managers, and at that point the LSCMI would be administered. if, for instance, they sent someone here for ISP supervision, but then we assess them and they come out as medium or low, we would at that point notify the court that due to that they are not eligible for the program and refer them back to a mixed probation caseload.
Mm-hmm. And how do you, oh, sorry, this is for Overland. Thank you for that. For Overland, who pays for the provider's initial assessment? Is it billable to insurance?
No, the LSIR is something that's completed by probation officers. We have to be certified to do the training for that. So it's nothing insurance would cover at all. It's just something every client gets. Hopefully prior to sentencing, one is supposed to be done. At times it's not. So we would do that at like their initial appointment. And then 6 months after that, we would do another one to see where they're at with their risk and need.
Okay. Thank you. And Salt Lake, how do you fund or how do you pay for medication-assisted treatment like Vivitrol?
Yeah, so with Vivitrol in particular, we received a state grant to work with Vivitrol with the criminal justice population, in particular while incarcerated. That was done with our county jail as well as with the state prison, with the Department of Corrections in Utah. We have since expanded that program with additional state grant dollars to go with all of our community treatment providers. And then we went back to our county council and received county general fund to expand the program to new referring partners. One of those in particular is going to be the ISP program. Currently, ISP can refer into the program, but they are not an exclusive referring partner, if that makes sense. We are opening that possibility here very shortly. And then we are also applying for the state targeted response grant through SAMHSA as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. This one is for Joe from Portland. What are the recommendations for other police and probation agencies who don't have partnerships? How can they initiate this process?
I really believe, and I guess this is going to be different depending on where you're at and who you have, but we just started with emailing and showing up and just being around and being helpful. So I started with just asking if I could get on the agenda for, and this is true for every agency that I've had to build relationships with my community, literally just sending out emails, writing a letter, can I just meet with you just for 10 minutes, and then trying to get into a staff meeting, and then just talking about just how can we make this work better and building this connection. And literally that, it doesn't cost any money to do that. It's phone calls and emails and letters and trying to get into a meeting, and then even if you can only get 15 minutes of a staff meeting 1 month, trying for a half an hour a month later, it takes time. But, and also when it comes to probation and pretrial and everybody it's really about just kind of meeting face to face and having a conversation about where there can be overlaps. So there's similarities in our differences, and there's also strength in how we can work together. So I think that that's huge.
Thanks, Joe. And one last one for Salt Lake. What is the role of the case manager, and is it a licensed social worker?
It can be. It's not a requirement. The only, as far as a set requirement to hold that position is to have a bachelor's degree in social work or criminal justice or related field. We do have some licensed social workers who work as case managers. Their role is essentially really similar to what would be a traditional probation officer, but we do just without the, say, the community component to it until we brought the officers into the program to assist us with that. So, for instance, they will meet with the clients on a weekly basis and help them work through their probation case plan, whether that's making connections into the community for various levels of treatment, or to help them establish or complete their community service, or to assist them with employment search, things of this nature. As well as I stated, at least in the ISP program here at County Probation, they will also do community outreach with the officers. They are also our primary point of contact for the courts. They prepare all the stay reports in order to show cause affidavits that are filed to address probation issues for our clients.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of our attendees for asking such inquisitive and great questions, and thank you to our presenters for all your responses. All our presenters had offered their email and contact information at the end of their presentation, so when we have that posted, please feel free to contact them with any additional questions. I'm going to hand it back to Jerry right now.
Thank you, Talia. Well, that concludes the webinar for today. Again, I just want to echo Talia's thanks to the presenters from the 3 different jurisdictions: Salt Lake County, Utah, Johnson County, Kansas, and Portland, Maine. I think we've heard about some really innovative partnerships in which law enforcement and community supervision have been able to collaborate to reduce recidivism, enhance public safety, and benefit the community. It will be a few days until the webinar is posted, but if you come back to the CSG Justice Center website, you'll be able to find the PowerPoint and all the slides, and you can review that at your leisure. So once again, thank you for attending. Everyone have a good day. Bye-bye.